I also want to raise an issue with the use of exclamation marks in your pleadings. And just picking excerpts from Daily Journal, they say when you use exclamation marks in judgments or any legal documents, it's equivalent of barking at a judge, shouting, or gesticulating wildly. What are your thoughts around that? Because I've noticed you use quite a lot of exclamation marks in your documents.
Maybe perhaps I should start by saying that why I use exclamation marks actually is to bring out, is to more like saying emphasis added. But I also appreciate the nature of the remarks that have been made in the article. I think I'll be more careful and going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
My second question, again, just a quote from Judge Amy Barrett. I think during her confirmation hearing, she had to say this about a judge. A judge must apply the law as written. Judges are not policymakers and must be resolute in setting aside any policy view they might hold. What is your thought around that quote?
To some extent, I agree, and to some extent, I do not agree. Because what would happen, for example, if you're handling a constitutional matter, and especially in, for instance, where you have, I'm sure, Commissioner, you're aware that where some provisions have been made unconstitutional, I think as a judge, if you were to apply a purposive approach and in tandem with Article 259, I think as a judge, you cannot be narrow-minded. You have to be progressive in how you do your judgments.
The bit of you agree with it. You do not agree with
Yes,
it. How about the issue of you agree with it? So you're saying it's 50-50.
Yes.
So kindly expound more.
To the extent that I agree with it is that also you, as a judge, you must realize that you should not, because you see, Commissioner, when you're talking about policy making, that is not the duty of a judge, because that would mean you are actually overreaching your mandate. And there's a question of separation of powers, because everyone should be able to work within their confines, Commissioner.
Okay. Lastly, is that Kenyans today have woken up to news, the Daily Nation, where the U.S. Trade Representative has stated that there is corruption within the judiciary. And if you allow me to quote, is that while judicial reforms are moving forward, bribes, extortion, and political consideration influence these cases. As such, foreign and local investors risk lengthy and costly legal procedures. End of quote. How does corruption interfere with judicial independence?
Commissioner, it does interfere, because that would mean that you're actually trying to, because my lady, Commissioner, let me put it this way. When you're actually bribed, that would mean that I have to play to your tune. And that would mean that I am deviating from what I'm supposed to do rightly, so that where I supposed to rule in a particular matter, if we were to go to be straitjacket, then that would mean that the way I think is interfered, and I'd have to look the other way, and that would be an injustice to the litigants or those people who approach the court for help.
And how would you then promote decisional independence at the same time promote accountability?
For me, I think, for example, I do appreciate that judges have, for example, they have what you call the researchers. And for me, as much as, yes, judges have researchers, it is a question of appreciating what the research individual has done and be able also to make my informed decision. Because I think it will be a sad state of affairs where you're being guided, yes, and you're using 100% what the researcher has done. So it boils down to me as a person, as an individual, doing what I need to do, and that is being independent. Yes, I appreciate the work you have done, the research that you have done, but I have to come up with my own way of thinking, Commissioner.
Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Now, when we were preparing for this exercise, we had a session with the stakeholders, and they told us that they would want a judge who understands the complexities of the judicial system, including the challenging environment and the power dynamics. Do you agree with that, and why do you think it's important to have that understanding?
It is important to have that kind of understanding, Commissioner, because you do realize that when you're serving litigants, when you're serving the advocates by extension.
First of all, do you believe that there is complexity in the judicial system?
Yes, there is complexity in the system, and therefore it is important that you have an individual who understands the dynamics, who is actually judge ready and will be able to hit the ground running, and so that any matter placed before that judge, they'll be able to handle, however technical, however complex, of course guided by the relevant statutes and the Constitution, they'll be able to handle. Because, Commissioner, if you were to have a situation whereby you have judgments that are not jurisprudently correct, then we have a problem, because that will boil down to access to justice, because that will also waste time and resources, because that would mean you have to go to a higher court to be able to rectify the wrong that has been done.
Okay. Now, judiciary has been on a transformative journey. Would you just briefly tell this panel the kind of the transformation that the judiciary has been undertaking, and how would you support this?
Okay, I am alive to the fact that there's what is called this social transformation to access to justice, which is, I think, a 10-year blueprint on the vision of what the judiciary will be in the next 10 years. What has been notable, Commissioner, is the utilization of ICT, and I'm glad that on the 11th of March, that with the guidance of the Honorable my Lady Chief Justice, there was a rollout of the e-filing in all the court stations. And to what I note about the ICT, I also note that there is a dashboard where there'll be tracking of the court activities in terms of why are there adjournments, for example, was it necessary to give an adjournment, in terms of how many rulings and judgments have been delivered by a particular judicial officer. And Commissioner, that is a step in the right direction, because when you have ICT as a component of for the service, for litigants to access justice, that actually is an enabling factor under Article 48, where everyone has the opportunity to access justice, and justice will not be delayed by virtue of the fact that you are actually in America and and that you have to travel. You don't have to travel. You can actually access justice at the comfort of your seat, Commissioner.
Okay. Lastly, and I agree with you that it's important to leverage ICT because COVID-19 introduced, of course, a new way of doing things around the world.
Yes, Commissioner.
But what risks do you think the judiciary will face, or we are exposed to risks, and how do you think that this risk will be mitigated?
I think the highest risk in as far as ICT is concerned is the element of data protection, because that would mean you have to put up a system that secures the kind of data that is in the system. Remember, you have e-filing, you have judgments and rulings, and you have all these other aspects, like, for example, maybe payment of bail or bond. And security, it is a security concern. What if there's an outsider who tries to infiltrate the system? That would mean that the information that is contained in the system will be out in the open, and I don't think that would be the intention of having an ICT component. That would be the greatest risk. So in terms of how to mitigate, I think here would have to have experts and professionals who, I think I liken it to, for example, a banking system, whereby the bank holds a lot of money, and you see, if they don't put their systems right, the monies that are due are being protected or being held on behalf of the customers will be diversed or to other third parties who are not supposed to be beneficiaries of that money. So if you have an expert to try and protect that interest, that would be a step in the right direction, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning once again.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Yes, I was listening to you earlier, and you alluded to a bring-up system in your law firm when you're explaining what went wrong with one of the cases that you had cited.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Yes, could you just briefly describe for us, if you have one, the performance measurement framework that is used in your firm, the firm where you work?
It's not clearly documented, but this is what we do as a matter of practice. Every week, as advocates, including my direct supervisor, what we do, we generate reports on a weekly basis, where it is it brings out two issues. One, the kind of court activity you had. For example, if you had a hearing, you had an application or a mention, and what kind of directions were issued. Then two would be the aspect of what kind of pleadings you have generated. In terms of if have you done an application, have you done a plain stroke order 11 compliance. That is the best we have in terms of performance. So that at the end of the week on Friday, we all converge at the boardroom and we have a discussion on the matters that we've had and progress to be made going forward. Yes.
So if today we wanted to know how you are faring on in terms of your score in the law firm where you are, because I believe there are several other associates.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Yes, so if I wanted to know how Ms. Amimo scores with the framework that you have, that
Yes.
is now to demonstrate to us how you work, how would I get that information?
Then that you'd have to get it from my direct supervisor. But unfortunately, we don't have a framework where you say that, for example, in the month of January, I was at 90%, in February, I was at 30%. We
So it's
don't have
basically
that
just
kind
a
of...
reporting system?
Yes.
It's just a reporting system?
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the areas of work that you practice,
Yes,
or
Your
rather the
Honor.
areas of law that you practice. And I just want, because you see, if you're successful in a bid to become a judge, tomorrow you may find yourself presiding over a criminal court,
Yes, Your Honor.
or at Milimani in the criminal division, where you'll only be handling criminal work.
Yes, Your Honor.
So I expect you must have appraised yourself with the criminal aspect of practice, because it looks like you do a lot of civil law.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Could you tell us, if you were to do case management in a criminal case, what would you be looking out to achieve?
I will be looking out to achieve a situation whereby you're able to conclude the matters in good time. And of course, I would be looking at the rights of the accused person as guided by Article 50, Sub-Rule 2, where, for example, the accused person has a right to access the documents that would be utilized in the hearing, so that once that aspect is concluded, in terms of they have everything they need for the hearing, then I would easily progress with the hearing. Then, of course, once you are done with that compliance stage, then we're able to take a date for the hearing.
I'm interested in the compliance stage.
The compliance stage.
Yes. So you have ensured that the accused person has the documents that the prosecution will rely on. What
Yes.
else would you look out for?
I would also look out whether the accused person understands the language of the court. Because if they do not understand, for example, is from an ethnic community, does not understand English or Kiswahili, that would mean I'd have to ensure that there's an interpreter so that the accused person can
Okay.
follow through the proceedings. Then there's the aspect of bail and bond. We also have to look at that aspect, because you would also have to give reasonable bail and bond terms, so that you also secure the attendance and also some level of freedom, even as they are waiting to articulate their issues before the court.
Any issues concerning the actual trial that you would want to address at that point?
Maybe something to do with if there is an objection about confessions, then that would be an issue to consider. We'd have to do a trial within a trial to actually establish whether they have that confession was properly secured. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, my lady.
Okay. And I would like to know your role in leadership, and specifically, I would like you to describe your key achievements as a leader, and that is the specific achievements that can be attributed to you as a leader and your leadership excellence.
Okay. I think I will bring out perhaps two issues. As I earlier mentioned, Commissioner, I have those who work under me, and I have what I call a mentorship, though it is not really programmed, but I have a mentor, those who are working under me, and I have been able to provide them with guidance on how to go about with their duties. And other than that, when there's conflicts that normally arise, like most recently, where there was a problem with how some of my team members were relating, I had to quickly come in and to resolve the issue so that we have a seamless way of working and ensuring that all the advocates are able to get the service that they require. Other than that, Commissioner, I also secure leadership in how I conduct my dockets. In fact, if I were to inquire from my direct supervisor, I'm actually the lead in terms of being organized and being a timekeeper, and that, Honorable Commissioner, is leadership, because it inculcates that you have to be a timekeeper, in order to be able to do your duties well, and also efficiency, where you're able to do your work well, and in a manner that is pleasant before your supervisors and also to the clients. Yes. And also, I've also shown leadership in terms of jurisprudence, as I've earlier stated, where there are reported cases, about 30, Commissioner.
What's the difference between a visionary leader and one who is not visionary? What specific things a visionary leader will do as opposed to one who is not visionary?
According to me, a visionary leader is one. For example, if you'll allow me to use the STARGE blueprint, where a visionary leader will come out with a template, and I call the STARGE blueprint as one that has come out from a visionary leader, because these are things that you want to see in the 10-year plan, that you have steps that you want to undertake to be able to make the institution better, to make it more efficient, to be able to make it more responsive. So when you're talking about vision, it's about what steps are these that you're taking to be able to take the institution or the people you're working with to a higher level, achieving also excellence in the process. One who is not visionary he just wakes up in the morning and just does as they wish, with no structured way of articulating their duties. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Honorable CJ. Good morning once more.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm going to ask you questions around Chapter 6 of the Constitution that talks about integrity and leadership. And maybe you could start by telling us, what does integrity mean to you?
According to me, integrity means working, simply put, I think I'll put it as working in an honest manner, devoid of any interference from third parties. That is how we'll simply define it.
Okay.
And then, of course, if you were to be guided by Chapter 6 of the Constitution, there are certain principles that will actually guide you. One is you have to work with, number one, honesty in the execution of your duties. Number two is that if there's any conflict of interest, you have to bring it up as soon as possible. Three, you have to act with impartiality in the execution of your duties, meaning that you do not have, you must not show favoritism or nepotism or bias. And then fourthly, you're able to excellently give services to the people. Remember, as a judge, you're required to serve the people, and therefore it behooves upon you to be excellent in the delivery of your services.
Okay. Thank you for that. Maybe you could tell this commission over time when your integrity was put to test and how you went about it, and perhaps any lessons that you drew from the situation.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the closest that I came to is when I was working with the firm of Kinyanjui and co-advocates. And during that time, I used to do a lot of what you'd call running down matters. And we had a policy that when you're doing such matters, you have to ensure that all the bakers of the documents are availed. So there are certain regions where the advocates, I will not mention which regions, where they would actually come to you and say, instead of us producing these documents, for example, the police abstract, the medical reports and the treatment notes, for example, because there's an expense attached to bringing these witnesses, why don't we instead give you this money, and then you will not have to, then we will now proceed with the matters and produce the documents by consent. So at that juncture, I do remember and I do recall that I was in fact, I was not amused. And I insisted that you have to bring all your makers, and I was not interested in the money. That was the closest to me being compromised. And I had a duty to my client to ensure that their policy was actually adhered to by ensuring that all the makers of the documents were availed and that I had to cross-examine them at that particular point. What I have learned from this Honorable Commissioner is that in the execution of your duties, you have a duty to be a person who is honest in their dealings, so that if there's any atmosphere that wants you to deviate from the path that you have taken, you should quickly avoid it, because it has an effect in your practice, because it will boil down to when you're called upon to serve in any other institution.
So some of your actions will then bring conflict
Yes.
with the people you work with.
Yes,
How
yes.
again do you go about it?
In terms of conflict management, maybe you can rephrase the question, sorry?
When you find yourself in such a situation, you're bound to have conflict with the
Yes.
people you're working with.
Yes.
How would you deal with that situation?
I think for me, I would have to bring the issue to my direct supervisor to be able to intervene and to be able to guide on the way forward. That would be, for me, would be the best approach.
Okay.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to handle it by yourself?
I can, because remember, as I said, I have tried. I have made it clear to you that I do not accept such kind of conduct. So if you keep on insisting, actually it's at the point of you insisting that then I'll escalate it to my superior.
Okay. Thank you. Now, there's judiciary has received attacks from external stakeholders where the institution is seen to be corrupt. What is your view on that?
I think it's more of a perception, because my proposition on that would be, if you have a feeling that the judiciary is corrupt, kindly bring that evidence before the right authority, so that once that evidence is received, then they can be able to act on it. But when you're busy doing that in the newspapers and in the media, it is of no use. If you want to be useful, tender the evidence, and the evidence will be looked at, and it will be, and if there is any probable cause, then it will be acted upon.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Commissioner Zirani. Finally, you said that you are a judge, lady,
Yes, my lady.
and that the position of a judge also entails leadership qualities.
Yes, my lady.
If you are successful in this application and you are sent to a station as a judge, I want you to tell us at least 5 things you would do to organize your court so that the court is efficient in terms of clearing backlog, in terms of delivering judgments. Yes.
Okay. First things first, my lady. What I'll do is I would have to convene a meeting with. Remember, there are people who already are there and they have worked in that environment. So first things first would be to convene a meeting so that I'll be able to understand and appreciate where they are, and so that once we're able to discuss, I'm able to look at that. I'll have a meeting. Then 2, we'll be able to analyze the key areas. For example, what are the problems, what are the challenges? Because if you don't do that, then you're not able to come up with the solutions. So, yes. Yes, then 3rd would be providing a solution. For example, if it's a question of backlog, why where is there backlog? For example, if in a commercial court, you would find that the stumbling block usually is interlocutory applications. So is there a way we can go around without having to hear the interlocutory applications? Let us go directly to the hearing, so where parties can do Order 11 compliance, and then we'll be able to take dates for the main hearing of the suit. Yes, yes, as opposed to applications. Then 4th, I would also employ the service tool. I have been a beneficiary of the service tool, not all, perhaps maybe on appeal matters, where if you are able to give clear directions from the word go, even before they appear before the deputy registrar, you're able to tell them in advance that in a month's time we'll have a service week, and these are the directions. If you filed your record of appeal, please ensure that you filed your submission so that on the date that you appear before the deputy registrar, it's just a question of taking a ruling date. Yes, yes, my lady. Number 5, I think I will also look at the challenging aspect to me would be, for instance, something to do with the typing of proceedings. If we can also make that as a priority, that will also bring movement, my lady. Yes, my lady. Yes.
The use of ADR, court annex mediation, and AJS.
Yes, my lady. I do agree.
You'd look at that.
Okay. Thank you, my lady.
Yes. Unless you have a question from the commissioners, thank you very much. But we also invite you to ask us a question before we bring this to an end, if you have any question.
My lady, I do not have any questions.
Okay.
Yes, my lady.
Thank you very much for your time and for availing yourself for this interview. We will consider your application alongside others, and we will get in touch with you when we complete the exercise.
Okay.
I wish you well, and thank you very much for the work you're doing in the legal profession.
Thank you very much, my lady. Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Thank you.